Hello everyone, today we're going to be reviewing a very controversial, disturbing film from the 1960s. It's called The Damned, and it's directed by the very, um, you could say, legendary, very critically acclaimed filmmaker Luchino Visconti. He's an Italian filmmaker from back in the day, and he's won the Palme d'Or, um, many different awards. I'm pretty sure. I haven't watched that many films of his, but I have watched The Leopard, and now this is the film that I watched. Actually, I watched this film about last week, and I was really thinking to make a review, but the movie was so dense. There were a lot of things happening, a lot of weird movements, and I didn't really know how to put it together and review it. It took time to gather my thoughts. I definitely didn't like a lot of things that happened in the movie, but there were also certain things that, as I thought about it more, it was like, oh, that is what they were trying to do. Oh, okay. And this movement was actually pretty smart. That movement was smart. So it really takes its time to settle in for the viewer. So that's why I didn't really know how to review this movie. So right now I think it's the right time. So okay, this I've already said this is a disturbing, controversial movie. So what even is this movie about? So I think if you've seen the posters of or heard about the movie synopsis, etc., you would know this movie is about the very early stages in Germany from when the Nazi Party was taking power. So this movie takes place in 1933, and we focus on one family throughout the whole story. So there's not so much stuff with the city and stuff happening. It's very focused on just one family and their relationships to each other, and their psychology, their how they go into this political stuff. So yeah, it's very much focused on this industrialist family called Von Essenbeck. They own the steel enterprise. They're a very generational family. Like they've had this steel mill for a very long time. They're super rich, very powerful. Okay, but as you can guess, because the Nazi Party is taking power, their power is sort of in it comes into question because they were very rich, but right now because the Nazi Party is taking power, they have to abide by their rules so that their property and stuff doesn't get taken away. And as you can see, there's some people in the family. One of the sons, he's like really opposed to the Nazi Party. He's like, no, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to support them. I don't want to get involved. And then there's another guy who was like, I don't really mind it. I think this is the way to go. I'm like that guy is like a actual Nazi already, so he's very much in favor of it. So you see two sides within the same family. One is supportive of the Nazis, and one side is opposed to the Nazis. And we see how this dynamic plays out, like in the way that even the like I don't know if I should say it's a spoiler, but since it's all a part of history, even though this movie is not exactly based on a true story, it is, about what actually happened in Germany at that time. Like what I understand, what this movie is trying to show is that this powerful family, even though they're opposed to the Nazis, like some of the people, they don't have a choice. They have to, if they want to keep their power as this powerful family with a lot of money and influence, they have to support the Nazi Party. They have to give money to them. They have to give the steel to make weapons for them. They kind of got no choice at that time. For the people who want to keep their power, like if they just want to run away, they could technically, but they are a aristocratic big family. Obviously, they're they're not gonna give away their power so easily. So that's kind of what is being shown in the movie, and those who are like, actually even the ones who run away, they still get screwed over, as we see in the events of the movie what happens to them. So there it's a lot of crazy things that happen as a part of history pre World War II. And then another thing that this movie shows, the reason why I said that this is so disturbing, is that this movie shows a really important character who is a a guy who likes kids, okay, in the wrong way, and it makes it so disturbing. And also, this movie came out in the 1960s, so it's like they kind of show a little too much. I felt with the kids, like those scenes were so disturbing. They went on for a little too long. Even though they didn't exactly show the act, they still showed enough for the audience to get very disturbed, and they still had the kid actors in with those, the guy who likes kids in the wrong way, uh, together, and it was way too disturbing. But I guess the standards of making films were different back then, so they were like, okay, we'll just film this just like that. So it did rub me the wrong way, but at the same time, I do understand what they were trying to show. Um, yeah, I still kind of don't know how to feel about it. It is a very conflicting film, and another super disturbing thing aspect of this movie is that this very important character is shown as like there's a lot of implications that he was abused as a kid. Like, I'm not entirely sure if that's what the director was trying to show, but it was very heavily implied that he was abused uh, in the worst way you can think of by his mother, who is part of this family as well. Like, this very, she's supposed to be the daughter of the main Juan Beck that is being shown. So later on in the film, there's a scene that, like, that very weird scene takes place, and then the next scene is so confusing. I was like, wait, what? So I still don't understand certain things that happen in this movie. Maybe I should watch it again, but I don't really want to watch it again because it's so disturbing. Um, but there's a scene where this guy, this very disturbing guy who already he likes kids the wrong way, and he got abused, implied that he got abused by his mom, and then it's also shown that he goes and does it with his mom. So that is also shown. It's really a lot of disturbing elements in this movie. Only thing that I can gather is that they're trying to show the mindset of someone who goes into the Nazi party and supports it, um, and also the corruption of the era at that time with the people. Like, why these kinds of powerful, rich families, they go and show their support for the Nazi party, right? Yeah, that's kind of what I can understand. Mm, and okay, we've talked about what this film is about and the disturbing elements in this movie. Um, I want to talk about the filmmaking aspect of this movie. This movie is shot. A lot of scenes play out in a way that there's a lot of zoom lenses. A lot of scenes are very. There's a lot of zooms involved. It goes into the character, shows their like facial expressions very slowly and methodically, and it shows their hands, what they're doing. It shows the objects. Um, so it's a very interesting filmmaking style. I would say it feels very observational. It feels like a documentary that is taking place right in front of our eyes. So I think that is what the director was trying to do. And this style is very different from the director's other film that I watched called The Leopard, which is a completely different filmmaking style. That Leopard movie was shot with um, Technirama, so it was a very um, eight perforation film stock, so it was very detailed. There's not, I don't remember any zooms in that movie. It was shot very elegantly, very composed images. There's no zooms. It's it's shot like a very classic Hollywood movie that is epic, right? So I'm curious why he opted to use a different style in this movie. It almost feels like a different director made it, but the showcase of these aristocratic people in the changing times, that theme is the same. Like both the leopard and this movie is about that. Okay, so I think this guy, he's tackling the same themes, but he wants to try it with different styles. Like I'm pretty sure in the late 60s, zoom lenses were very popular, and the documentary style was also very popular. So, and they're trying to make it as realistic as possible. So I think that's the reason why he adopted this style when this movie was made. And it's also not too far away. This movie was made in 1969, and World War II happened in 1939 to 1945. So the events this movie is depicting is not from the 19th, 18th century, it's from the 20th century. So I think that's also one of the reasons he wants to show it like a documentary. So yeah, that was very interesting, and I really did like a lot of the scenes, the way it was shot, the way it was composed, the way it was edited, um, the way it was blocked. Um, but disappointingly, I felt like the the performances and for many of the actors were quite melodramatic. I'm not sure if it was intentional. It might still be the transition between the old style of acting, between the new style of acting, where the newer ones are much more realistic and the old ones are much more theatrical. Um, so, like, I guess it's like a transition period, and also this movie was made as a pan European movie where there's different, like, there's English speaking actors, Italian, Sweden, French, so they might not be able to speak the same language. So, I can see that this movie was heavily ADR'd, so that might also be the reason why the acting was quite melodramatic in a lot of places. And also, that's one of the gripes that I had. I felt like this movie really needed a more grounded approach to the style and the acting. Like the acting was not fitting in with the style. I felt, um, yeah, either they should have went fully theatrical, melodramatic, and just stuck with that, or they should have went full on documentary style, realistic with realistic cinematography, realistic acting. So yeah, I think either two of the styles, if they went for it completely, I think the movie would have been much better in my opinion. Um, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I felt the movie didn't connect with me as much as it could have. Um, Still, I thought the acting for what they were given, most of the actors did a pretty good job. There was Ingrid Tullin playing the Sophie von Essenbeck, the mother of the Martin von and Essenbeck in this movie. I think she did a very good job. I thought her performance was consistent with the overall like style of the movie. Like I felt like she had the right balance of both realistic and theatrical. And of course, she acted in Ingmar Bergman films, so she's one of the great actresses of that time. So I thought her performance was great. Um, the acting of Dirk Borgard, he also did a pretty good job. He plays the husband of one the Sophie von Essenbeck. He plays a character called Frankie. So like no, not Frankie, Frederick. Yes, he did a pretty good job, I thought. But yeah, there were some moments where I felt like he was going a little too theatrical. In the later parts of the movie, before that, I felt like okay, his performance was very nuanced, subtle, and his character was also a very conflicted character. Like he was not from the Essenbeck, he was married into it, and he was trying to take the the power as the male heir of the steel mill, the factory, and he didn't want to get involved with the Nazi party, but he was pretty much forced to by both his wife and the Aschenbeck, the Nazi cousin of this family. So yeah, it was very interesting to see, and I definitely was expecting to see more of his character in this movie, but unfortunately we don't get him as much. I felt like if the movie focused more on him and his the psychology and his struggles, that would have been more interesting, at least for me. Um, and then we got the pretty much the main character of this movie, played by Helmut Berger. He plays Martin von Essenbeck, and as I mentioned before, he is the one who plays the guy who likes kids in the wrong way, and the guy who has, heavily implied that he got abused, and then later he, does the thing with his mother. So it's very very disturbing character. I think the director focused a little too much on him, and there's some trivia that I read that Luchino Visconti, the director of this movie, is gay, and he had a relationship with this actor, and that is why he was so prominently featured, and he was given more scenes. So, okay, granted, I think he is a good actor, but like since this movie was heavily ADR'd and since there's like different actors from different countries, like something didn't fit in. I think his expressions were good, but the way he delivered the dialogues in English, it was unintentionally funny. I felt. Maybe if I watched the German version of this movie or the Italian version of this movie, I might have a different opinion. But the English version of this movie that I watched, it left a lot to be desired. Like I felt like the the delivery, especially at the later stages of the movie, where he's like, "Oh, I want everything that belongs to me. I want everything," and it's like it's supposed to be a very serious, very like intense scene, but it's just unintentionally funny for me. It's like, what is this guy even saying? Like, okay, we get it, we get this character, we get why he's like this, but the performance is just it's unintentionally funny. But the scenes before that, when he shows his eyes, he shows like the expressions he gives. That's very intense. That those were very good. I felt, and the last scene of the movie where he's officially turned into this, like I'm not sure if it's a spoiler, but since it's a very old movie, I'm just gonna spoil it right out. And if you don't want to hear the spoiler, you can leave this review. Leave this review. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it. So this guy turns into the Nazi eventually, and he also takes up the hair. The he takes power of the family fully. So I thought that performance was good. That scene was a little like I kind of didn't understand why they showed this and this. Like I didn't know why they showed him sleeping with his mother, and then he in the end kills his mother and the the husband as well. Like it was all quite confusing the way they showed it in succession. Um, yeah, it was all very weird. Like I get that he wants to take power and take up the hair, but like I don't know why they showed this guy going and you know taking drugs, and then he sleeps with his mother, and then he kills his mother as well by giving the mother poison. And when the mother, like before that, the mother and the his supposed stepfather, they have the marriage. Apparently they didn't get married, they only get married now, and they have the wedding, and then they drink poison, which was given by this Martin character, and then they die. So it was all very confusing why that kind of scenario was shown. Maybe if I was European, I might get it, or if I understood more of the history of the Nazi Party, I might get it. But now I'm an Indian guy in Hong Kong. I really don't get it. So if you have watched the movie, please do leave your comments or analysis of why this kind of scene was shown, so that I can understand potentially. Another thing that I want to talk about is there's a character called Gunther von Essenbeck. So this character I actually found really interesting. He's a guy who's fully opposed to the Nazi Party, and he's the he's one of the cousins of this. He's one of the younger members of the family, and he goes to study, and he's like trying to correspond with the family members who escaped the Nazi Party grip, and they also left the one Essenbeck because they didn't want to associate with this Nazi Party thing. So, yeah, that character was very interesting. I don't know why they didn't show it in this movie. I felt like if it was shown, it would have been much better. So, I at least felt like this movie was like 2.5 hours long. They focused a little too much on the wrong characters. If they instead showed more of the better characters, it would have been more fulfilling for me. It would have been more interesting. Yeah, I felt like there was way too much emphasis on the negative characters and the corruption, the depravity, the this very morally depraved, excessive people who are like engaging in these perverted activities, um, these like just guy who likes kids, and then he like all these kinds of things. I felt like those were given way too much focus. At the very least, they should have showed more of the other characters. Like I think this would have been a much better film in my opinion. um, and then another sequence that I really want to talk about. So there's something that happens in this movie which is related to the real history of the formation of the power, consolidation of the Nazi Party. So that is the Night of the Long Knives. So we are shown early on in this movie that there's a like the SA and the SS have some disagreements. So the SA want more power, and the SS is kind of opposed to it because they don't want the SA to get too much power and take control of their own military. The SS wants to keep it. And personally, as a viewer watching this movie, as a non-European, just a guy who is interested in history, I just want to know what is going on. I'm a guy who is interested in history, and I'm also a film buff. Me watching this in this movie, the way it's presented, I couldn't care less. And please feel free to dislike this video, disagree, and leave your explanations. But the way it was shown in this movie, I really could not care about anything that happened. I don't care whether the SS or SA takes power or not. Like who cares, Like technically, yes, on the grand scheme of things, it is a very significant event in history. Okay, I'm pretty sure I did read about it later on after I watched the movie, and it was like, oh, okay, I get it. But the way it was presented in this movie, it was, they didn't make it in a way that the audience could care. Okay, whatever was presented was not enough, or it was shown in the worst way possible, I felt. So it's like when the events happen, it's like, okay, like the character that is associated in this movie, the main character, a guy called Constantine, who is like, he starts off as a fucking asshole. In this scene, he's an asshole. When he finally gets fucking killed, he's an asshole. So it's like, I don't give a fuck if he dies, you know? So as a viewer, I literally did not care. So I think those are things that this movie could have done better, or at least that sequence could have been shortened. So I don't know why they had to show all these like like detailed movements of these guys going in, they're having a party, they're engaging in, you know, they're going and engaging sex with these prostitutes and male sex workers, and like I didn't know why they had to show it so detailed. Maybe there is a purpose to it, like it's all showing part of a history, but in this movie, in this scenario, like it could have been presented much better. And the way it was presented was also, it doesn't flow with the story either, it doesn't flow with the screenplay. The movie is already 2.5 hours long, and like this sequence is, it goes on for way too long. And I was told that in the original cut, in the American version, this scene was cut because it showed too much sexual content. And I mean, as a viewer, I think it's still pretty tame, but that's not really the point. Like, I felt like this could have been much reduced. You don't have to go so on and on without much character detail. Um, you know, just because it happened in history doesn't mean, because you put that sequence, you show it so detailed, and then your movie also turns very significant. It doesn't happen that way. You, as a screenwriter, as a filmmaker, you gotta infuse it with character. You gotta infuse it with drama for the audience to care. Otherwise, you're just making a documentary. For if for that, then I would much rather watch a documentary than watch a narrative film, right? Because you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot present a documentary style movie and also this very melodramatic staged movie where there's, you know, very very high moments that are very theatrical, etc. So that's kind of what I felt. Um, as I mentioned before, this movie could have been either full on documentary style movie, or it could have been a very theatrical, very over the top, epic type of movie. Um, yeah. And also, this movie is a little too long. It's 2.5 hours long, and it's not an epic movie. I mean, technically, it takes place in history, and it's about these very aristocratic characters, but it's a drama. It's a drama. Like, it's a historical drama. It's presented as a historical drama. It's almost like a TV movie, certain sections. But to its credit, some sequences are very well filmed, very well executed. Right, I don't want to dismiss it completely. This movie has great costumes, great set design. Um, Certain movements have great lighting. So, yeah, overall, I think this could have been better. Um, but yeah, if you're interested in history like me, then you could give it a go. Um, yeah. What the point of this movie was, I'm really not sure, but just from a viewer, film buff standpoint and a historical enthusiast standpoint, I guess they were trying to show that the people who joined the Nazi Party at this time, they were already kind of morally depraved, and um, they the Nazi Party only came into power because they had help from these kinds of industrialist families. Um, and then they also show the infighting that happens. Like this guy, he supports the Nazi Party, but then because of the infighting with the SA and the SS of the Night of the Long Knives that are shown, they the infighting happens and they kind of eat themselves, and then the last man standing with the whoever shows the most power, the most depraved, the most cruel person is at the top. He's the one who is getting the power. Everyone else dies. So that's kind of what is trying to be shown, I guess. And it's technically a very historical, not not historical, but a very classic style of story, right? Even in The Godfather, that this is what is shown, like the last man standing, the guy who just kills everyone. He just shows his power, keeps his power, and he's the male. Um, he shows the power to everyone and kills everyone, and yeah, that's the last man standing, and that is what has been happening throughout history, and it's like a critique of that as well, but then they're still kind of showing it in a melodramatic way. So like, yeah, this it is what it is, and I think I would get into more detail about my own thoughts on these kinds of movies later on, but this is what it is. Yeah, maybe I didn't explain it as well as I should have. Maybe you viewers might be confused as to what I'm saying. But yeah, these are just my thoughts, my rants about this movie. So I'll see you in the next review. Bye.